delighted today to be here with Kirsty Scully, who's a certified financial planner at Core Wealth. Welcome, Kirsty.
Hi, good to meet you, David.
So great to see you here at the beautiful Mount Nelson Hotel in Cape Town. We're going to talk about some of the latest trends from financial planning for South African clients as you see it in your practice. But first of all, it'd be great to hear a little bit more about your background and Core Wealth.
Absolutely. Well, I've been in the profession now for 32 years, so quite a while, and been dealing mainly throughout my time with high net worth clients, and I specialize in investments.
Okay.
So at Core Wealth, we're a totally independent financial planning company. So it gives us that opportunity to really give advice to our clients where there's absolutely no bias.
Yeah.
I'm fee-based,
Yeah.
so people pay me a fee. There's no conflict of interest coming through with a commission or anything like that. And I'm able to place clients' business both locally in South Africa as well as offshore.
Fantastic, very interesting. And are there different types of category of client that you might work with, like the entrepreneurial sector, those who are perhaps inheriting wealth, or those going through a divorce, or there's different sort of categories in which you
I mean, obviously, it's going to depend on how much there is to invest. And I'm going to be the person who's going to be looking for people with the higher amounts in investments to be able to invest for them. But if I look at a specific sector that I work in, I work mainly with doctors. So in the medical field, I've got a lot of doctors who come and see me about their finances. And again, we place their investments there.
So a doctor, for example, is a high-earning professional who's earning well through their career, thinking about their retirement, but also, I suppose, thinking about what if something were to happen, do I have pay off the mortgage, pay the school fees? I mean, what are the front and centre for some high earning professional like that here in South Africa?
Well, I think one of the most important things, people often say to me, what is the most important thing I should have with my finances? And if you are earning a good income, you need to make sure that you've got income protection. So that you're covering that. So that is something that I can obviously offer my clients. But what I do is I go through a full financial plan when I actually meet with clients. And we look at everything. So we look at what would happen in the event of death. Basically exactly what you're talking about. What would happen in the event that they were to be disabled and can't work? And then we go through processes like retirement planning. And I don't even like to talk about the word retirement because nowadays that's almost a little bit taboo, talking about retirement planning. People are thinking about what is going to fund them in the future when maybe they're not working as hard, maybe they're only working a couple of days a week,
but
they're stepping back, but they're
like
not stopping. Exactly.
Yeah.
People have gone are the days that people tend to just get to 65 and that's it. They want to know that they can continue consulting and maybe a couple of days a week, do it like that, and therefore they want to work on from an investment perspective. What are they going to do to ensure that they've got sufficient? So I work on planning with that. But for me, what is most important is to ensure that my clients are achieving their goals. So obviously, I'm on the side of the financial goals, how we get ensuring that the clients are doing that. So I spend quite a lot of time with clients discussing what their goals are. And sometimes people have actually not even managed to verbalize what a goal is.
Yeah.
But I'm there to help sort of almost drag it out of them to actually work out what is the goal. So that, because if you don't set the goal, if you don't write it, you're not going to achieve it. So I love that side of it because literally sometimes we draw pictures. I was talking recently about somebody who wants to, when she does retire or slow down with working, she wants to be able to travel around South Africa in a caravan.
Yeah.
So we've got it in her financial plan, a beautiful picture of a caravan, and that is her goal. But maybe it's your goal to want to go and have fun in France or something. Put a picture of the Eiffel Tower there and make that your goal. That's the sort of thing I do.
Very, very interesting. And I mean, at what point do high-earning professionals think as well about investing overseas? I mean, at what point, how do you judge, what you should be doing and where you should be investing to make sure that when you come to retirement, you've got the spending power that you want?
Yes, well, I guess it's diversification.
Yeah.
If you are here in South Africa and your liability is here in South Africa, you need to keep some money here in South Africa to pay for that liability. But I'm a 100% believer in you've got to diversify as well. And that's going to be across different asset classes, but it's also going to be geographically to ensure that we've got some of the money in perhaps a hard currency and just exposure to other parts of the world.
And can that be accessed from even quite a small, people just getting offshore savings away in quite a modest way, or do they have a step up to make that leap, as it were?
Well, what you'll find is that quite a number of the portfolios have got that offshore exposure. So, for example, you could go into a retirement fund here, which maybe has got about 30 to 40% with offshore exposure, but you're not actually exchanging currencies. Okay, so that helps with a lot of people who maybe don't have the sort of money that we would be looking at for exchanging currencies. Generally speaking, if we're exchanging currencies, we're probably looking at about $25,000 US. So that's a fair amount of money. The average person is not necessarily going to have that, but the average person with a retirement fund will have exposure offshore because the fund has actually done a conversion and is actually investing offshore. So your fund is going to ensure that a good portion is invested directly offshore, but then don't forget about another portion of the fund which is invested into South African assets, which is deriving the income offshore. So that's another way of actually accessing offshore investments.
But what are the main sort of saving vehicles for the professionals? I mean, in the UK, the pension is a very strong one.
Yes.
Also, there's insurance wrappers. There's different things that professionals might use in order to accumulate money. I mean,
Yes.
what are what's the toolkit like here for a professional
Very similar.
saving? Yeah.
Very, very similar,
Yeah.
because firstly, you've got to have some form of retirement fund, whether it's a retirement annuity or a preservation fund or even a living annuity for perhaps more likely older people. But most people will start at least with a retirement annuity because that is going to give them a tax deduction. So it's not just a case of I'm investing for my retirement. I'm actually also saving now on what I would on the amount of tax that I'm paying. So there's a huge benefit to doing that. So yes, retirement savings is very important, but once people have got perhaps sufficient, maybe on a monthly basis, towards their retirement savings, I definitely start looking at other goals. And that's where we start looking at, do they have a lump sum of money that they can move overseas? And then we would definitely move some of that overseas. But again, that depends on the client, because your lower income person who perhaps doesn't have that capital is not necessarily going to have sufficient money to be able to move that overseas. So they would have to really be going in through a different method.
And I mean, exchange controls obviously restrict what people can do, but if people are making regular savings, does that actually help because they're utilising, is it allowances that are available each year that they can avail themselves of? Or how does that work in practice for a professional?
There's 2 points here.
Yeah.
The first point is that it's not very easy to invest a small amount of money on a monthly basis overseas. For most of our clients, they have to invest it here, and when it gets to a decent size, then we move it. Okay, so that's the one part. But the other part, as far as moving money on a regular basis offshore, I don't find there's much of a restriction, because the restriction is up to, you can take 10 million rand per person a year. So husband can take 10 million, wife can take 10 million. There's not going to be many people who are going to be doing that sort of amounts on a regular basis. So personally, I have not seen it to be much of a restriction for clients.
It's really about the discipline of saving, isn't it? As
Absolutely.
a financial planner is partly your role to just sort of challenge people to make that monthly saving, or to have the discipline to actually pay yourself first, as they say, from out the paycheck.
I'm a firm believer in that. Give and then ensure that you're paying yourself.
And what do you think the picture is with, I mean, interest rates are rising globally. In the UK, there's been a lot of people had a shock with mortgage payments rising. I mean, how do you see that impacting on savers and people who are trying to, I mean, there's a benefit for savers in that they'll have a pickup in the interest rates, but how do you see the picture there?
Yeah, I think we've been severely negatively impacted this year in particular by very high interest rates in both the UK and the US. And obviously those are high because of inflation's been high, and the Fed has brought in higher interest rates so that we can, because if they do that, then what's going to obviously happen is it will bring inflation down ultimately by doing that. So that has made a difference. We've seen I should say, I hope we have seen into the actual inflation peak now in the US, because we have seen it come down over the past 2 months or so, and that is positive. And I think what we're going to see now is we're going to see that the Fed won't continue to increase interest rates at the same rate that they have been. If you look at the way interest rates moved up this year, from the first interest rate hike at the beginning of the year to now, in a space of sort of about 8 or 9 months, around about that, moved up almost 4%. That is one of the highest it's ever moved up. If you think in 2015, it moved up over a 3-year period, not even as high as that. So we definitely saw interest rates being pushed high because of that inflation rate in the US. I'm hoping we've seen the peak of that. But the UK is a little bit different because we haven't seen, we still have yet to see when the peak is on inflation. I think inflation's sitting at about 11% or somewhere around there at the moment. And obviously that is very high. South African inflation is also over 7% at the moment. So we are sitting with a situation that our inflation is out of the band that it should be in. We should be in a 3 to 6% band. That is our government's expectation, a plan to keep it within 3 to 6%. But we've gone out of that band. And because of that, we've seen the interest rates in South Africa also having to move up. So again, waiting for that to peak so that hopefully we can have a slow down of interest rates next year so we can start stimulating the economy again a bit more, because that is so vital for our economy.
And when clients are investing abroad, I mean, do they like the US equity market, the technology stocks? Where is it that, obviously each client's different, but where do you find that people tend to talk to you? What are the areas globally that people are interested in?
Interestingly enough, I find that most clients don't really start to specify what area.
Yeah.
They leave that to us. They know that our CFAs, our chartered financial analysts, are the experts.
Yeah.
That's what they do. And they find the right place. They're not trying to be stock
pickers,
no,
your clients.
Fortunately, they're not trying to be stock pickers, because I think if they were, I'd say, well, maybe go and pick your own stock somewhere.
Yeah, sure.
But so for our actual funds, that is what our fund managers are doing, ensuring that they do the stock picking. I don't really find that the clients do. But the clients do want to know that they've got offshore exposure. And they will often say, well, where is the exposure? And I'll go through with them exactly what exposure we are getting, whether it's in the US, whether it's UK, Europe, or in fact, even emerging markets. Because we do foresee that emerging markets are actually going to be doing really well over the next few years. So we're quite adamant that we've got to have a decent exposure to emerging markets.
And a mixed blend across the asset allocation from equities, fixed income, alternatives.
Absolutely. That's diversification.
Well positioned.
Yeah, for us, diversification is very important. We like to diversify for our clients in 3 different ways. Firstly, across different asset managers. So you name it, I'm not going to mention any of the companies, but a number of different asset management companies we'll be using. Probably in the region of, we probably using about 30 different asset managers, because they all going to view the market differently. So we'll be diversifying across different asset managers. And then secondly, we're going to diversify across different asset classes, exactly as you say. A bit in equity, well, should I say the biggest portion is normally in equity, a portion in property, a portion in bonds, a portion in cash, and then of course don't forget alternative investments becoming much more popular now, to actually be able to have a portion of it in hedge funds as well. And then, so that's asset managers, asset classes, and lastly, to diversify geographically. Some onshore, some offshore.
And I imagine, I mean, one of the goals for clients that comes up is saving for education, children going to either to school overseas or to university. I mean, how do people do that medium-term saving that's not about their own retirement, but that does have some time horizon on it? I mean, is there a specific, other than just the straight-up discipline of putting money into an investment account, savings account?
It is really going to be as simple as that. You've got to just invest the money. There's,
right.
Unless the golden goose lays her egg. But the point here is that for me, I would ensure, firstly, that my clients are saving sufficiently for their own futures. And then, when they're on the right track there, then get saving for their children's education. Because remember, a child can always, inverted commas, an adult child, if you know what I mean, can always go to university and apply for a loan, a student loan.
You have to be financially secure yourself.
Exactly. Make sure that you've sorted out yourself, and then you start saving. And generally speaking, those who are able to have sufficient money for children to go to varsity overseas are generally either extremely wealthy or those who have inherited.
Okay.
Or maybe there's a bursary system or something like that.
And what about in the area of life insurance? I mean, is that something that you actively advise on? I mean, in the UK, it's been a very useful tool around planning for estate duties and things like that, where you've got an asset where there might be a 40% inheritance tax liability on, and life assurance is a common part of the picture. Is that equally true here?
It is absolutely equally true. We've got your inheritance taxes are slightly different to our estate duty, works in a different way, but we do put that in place to ensure that when a person passes away, and it's generally after the second in the couple have died, that's when the estate duty is going to start coming into place. We ensure that there is something like life cover there to pay for all those expenses. And of course, it's not only estate duty, it's also things like executors' fees that need to be paid for.
Yeah.
So
because probate can take some time, and
exactly,
families need liquidity.
Exactly. Yeah. So we need to ensure that there's liquidity to pay for those expenses, but also liquidity for the remaining spouse to ensure, because a lot of investments tend to get tied up until the estate has actually been wound up. So it's very important that we have a structure where some of the investments are able to be literally liquidated upon the receipt of a death certificate. And that really makes things a lot easier. Yeah.
In some of the interviews we've been doing over the last 10 days, people have remarked about people moving to Cape Town from other parts of South Africa, from Johannesburg and elsewhere. Have you seen, as we emerged from the pandemic, people have looked at their lifestyle and thought, actually, I want something different, or made moves that that they wanted to do? Have you noticed that as someone based down here?
We are seeing that a lot. We absolutely are seeing that a lot. And in fact, I actually had a meeting recently with the mayor of Cape Town. And he was just saying to me that the expectation over the next 10 years is that we'll have an infiltration of about 1 million people from other parts of South Africa moving down to Cape Town.
Wow.
And because we do know it is the place to live. It really is. We have the lifestyle here, the beauty that one doesn't really get elsewhere.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are threatened by that 1 million people that are going to be coming down here. And yes, obviously, it is concerning our roads and that sort of thing. But what a fantastic economic opportunity.
It's how you drive growth, isn't it? By
Absolutely.
People. Yeah.
Let's get the growth going, because there's huge opportunity that we'll certainly see coming through.
And it's great to see tourism coming back. I mean, I was down at the waterfront over the weekend, and it's just wonderful to see businesses coming back strong, isn't it?
It is wonderful.
And we're here tonight, obviously, at the Mount Nelson. We've got a networking dinner for intermediaries. I mean, what kind of intermediaries do you find you work with? I imagine the accountants, tax and legal advisors, professionals, perhaps based internationally as well. I mean, you tell me where you tend to get good partnerships with professionals.
Yeah, so I work with certified financial planners. I'm a certified financial planner, and so within our business, we've got a number of certified financial planners. But I think what is important for clients is that they're always dealing with somebody who has a good qualification, specifically in financial planning. And of course, the top one is the postgraduate qualification, which ultimately leads to doing the board exam, which is the certified financial planner. So I think that's very important. Alternatively, to look at a chartered financial analyst as well, because they can also give a lot of impact into what is actually available in the markets from very much from an asset management perspective. But your certified financial planner is going to give you much more of the overall look into financial planning. So I think it's important that people look at that. As far as my colleagues go, as I say, certified financial planners, but as long as you're always dealing with somebody who is registered with a professional organisation such as the Financial Planning Institute of Southern Africa.
Great, so important to get the right advice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, it's been terrific to talk to you today, and we really look forward to sharing this interview. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Good.
The latest technical content delivered through global conversations with professionals for professionals.